Hi, good evening. So in 2017, I went to Sri Lanka with my boss, Anthony Bourdain. And one evening, about 10 days into that trip, I found myself wondering, did I just escape from a seriously dangerous situation, or was I just a completely clueless, blundering tourist in a part of the world that I knew nothing about? Now, before I get started, I want to just sort of do a show of hands. How many people here have been to Sri Lanka? Just give me a hands up. Okay, looks like a fair number. So for the rest of us, just to situate us all in this part of the world, Sri Lanka is a teardrop-shaped, fairly small island nation off the southern tip of the Indian subcontinent. And I was there, like I said, with Anthony Bourdain, who you'll hear me call Tony, because that's what he called himself, and that's what everyone called him. I was tagging along for a television shoot. I didn't really have a job. I was just there to kind of observe. And really my only job was to stay out of the way, stay invisible, don't let the cameras pick me up, and stay quiet. I was newly sober. I had fewer than 90 days since my last drink. And I got really jealous every time I would see the crew members at the end of the night drinking these big, sweaty, wet gin and tonics, and I could just smell the gin. It was like this punch in the face. But I didn't have a drink. I was counting my days. I would have a Diet Coke and go to bed. So the night in question, the day in question, was the Madai Festival in Jaffna, which is in the northern part of Sri Lanka. And if you're a Bourdain fan at all, if you're a fan of Parts Unknown, you might remember the Madai Festival. It was Season 10, Episode 5 of Parts Unknown. And it was this really intense festival where people of the Hindu faith are given the opportunity to cleanse their spiritual ledger for the year. So this is somewhat similar to Lent for Catholics or Yom Kippur for Jews, but it's a little more intense than that. There's 40 days of fasting, and then men and women do different acts of true pain, basically. There's no other way to put it. They are in a lot of pain to clear their spiritual ledger. So women walk a processional route holding on to pots of something that is on fire, and it's close to their bodies, and so they're just sort of holding on to this heat. And while they're walking, they're also wearing these shoes that have nails hammered into them, business side up. So they're walking along, holding fire in a very, very hot climate, in a lot of pain from the shoes. And the men, and you may remember this from the episode, the men, after fasting for 40 days, have these very large gauge hooks hooked through their backs on either side of the shoulder blades. Those hooks are then attached to ropes, which are led around by other men, or they are suspended from a crane, and they're hanging from this crane by these hooks, and it's bouncing along a parade route. It's really, really intense. So we're there, they're filming it, Tony's doing interviews, and not only are the people with the hooks and the people with the fire and the shoes, but there's also hundreds and maybe even thousands of dancers and drummers and people chanting, and it's quite an intense experience. So Tony does his work, he does some interviews, and then we get hustled back into a car to leave the event. Only the car has to basically follow the same processional route that all of the devotees are following. So this whole thing is eddying around the car, and I'm just sitting in the back, watching through the window, seeing these men with the hooks and the women with the fire and the drumming and the chanting, and it's so mind-blowing. And I look over at Tony as if to be like, are you seeing this? And I look at him, and he's scrolling on his phone. He could not be less interested in this magical thing that's happening outside the window. And I thought, oh my God, this guy has seen everything. Nothing can move him anymore. He's not interested. He would rather look at formerly known as Twitter than what's this magical spectacle. So I just let it go. And a few minutes later, he looked up and he said, hey, I see there's a KFC near our hotel. Why don't we get some KFC, get a bottle of whiskey, we'll bring it up to the roof, and we'll have a party for the crew when they're done, when they wrap up. So I thought, great, I have a job, right? Because I never have anything to do on these shoots, but I can get whiskey and chicken. So he goes into the hotel, and I take off walking, and my first stop is the liquor store, which is really just a window through which you pass money and you get liquor. And I saw that there was Johnny Walker Black, and so I gave the man my credit card. He gave me the whiskey. I thought, great, that's done. Let me go to KFC. This KFC was in a second-story, sort of an urban mall. So I got in the elevator to go up to the KFC, and just before the doors closed, a young man jumped in the elevator with me. And he looked at me and he said, "Where are you from?" And I said, "United States." And he said, "Oh, I have dinner with you." And I said, "Oh, no, thank you. I'm just picking up the chicken. I'm not staying." Elevator doors open. I went into one line. He went into another. And I ordered several pieces of chicken for this crew. And they said, "Well, it's going to take about 20 minutes. That's a lot of chicken. So you pay for it now and wait around." And so I opened up my wallet, and I realized I'd left my credit card back at the liquor store window. Paid for the chicken with cash, got my receipt, put it in my backpack with the whiskey, and headed out back to the liquor store. I get down to the street, and standing there is the young man from the elevator who had asked to have dinner with me. And I turned and went in the opposite direction, and pretty soon he was behind me, and then he was right next to me. And he said, "I will go with you to your hotel." And I said, "No, thank you. I don't need company." And he said, "No, I go with you to your hotel. You're very beautiful. I'll put my penis in your mouth." And I said, "No, thank you." I was married at the time. I said, "I'm married." This was not interesting to him, did not at all faze him. So we kept walking, and I said, "Please leave me alone. Please, I'm not interested." He continued to walk with me, and I could see that I was just about to go through this kind of creepy overpass that I had already passed through once going to the liquor store, but I was alone, and I didn't think anything of it. But I didn't want to lead this guy into this overpass. So I looked over, and there were a couple of other guys with tuk-tuks, and they were taking a break, having a smoke, chatting. Tuk-tuk is like a small sort of motorized taxi that you see a lot in Sri Lanka. So I went over to them, and I said, "Can you please help me? I'm being followed. I don't feel safe. Can you please give me a ride? Take me to the liquor store." And they kind of looked at each other, and I showed on my phone, this is the map, here's the liquor store. And one of the men said, "That's not a ride. It's not worth it. Look, it's right there. I can see it. I'm not going to take you." I said, "Please, I don't feel safe. Can you please take me to the liquor store and then back to my hotel?" And finally he said, "Okay, get in." So I got in. He took me the 30-second drive to the liquor store. I left my bag on the seat, and I said, "I'm just going to get my credit card." I jumped out. The man from the liquor store had my card. He saw that I had left it, handed it to me, and just as I turned around to get back in the tuk-tuk, he started the engine and drove away. And he's got my bag. And inside my bag is my passport, my phone, my glasses, everything I need, my wallet, the whiskey. The only thing I have is this one credit card in my hand. So I'm yelling, "What the fuck? Come back." He doesn't come back when I yell at him, oddly enough. I'm crying. Gentleman from the liquor store comes out and says, "I have a motorbike. Get on my motorbike with me, and we'll chase the guy in the tuk-tuk." And I'm like, what the fuck? How many men am I going to have to assess and possibly defeat in order to get some chicken and whiskey to the crew? But I don't really have a choice, right? So I gingerly get on the back of his bike. I'm trying not to touch him. I don't want to give him the wrong idea. And he's just about to take off, and then we see that the tuk-tuk has made a big U-turn and is coming back toward us. Now, did he realize he had taken off with my bag? Did he think better of it? Was he just a U-turn guy? I don't know. But he came back, I got in, I grabbed my bag, and I said, "Please take me to the Jetwing Hotel." He said, "Okay." So we head toward the hotel, and then we go past the hotel. And it seems like he's speeding up. And I'm like, oh my God. Look down, I see there's sort of a culvert and a dirt road, and we're going, all of 15 miles an hour, but I'm thinking, I'm gonna have to jump out of this tuk-tuk. I'm gonna have to break my shoulder just to get the chicken and the whiskey to the crew. And then, again, he does an enormous U-turn in the middle of the road and ends up in the front of the hotel. And I take my bag, and I pay him some money, and I get out, and I'm thinking, oh my God, I want to drink right now? What I wouldn't give just to open this whiskey. No one's gonna know. I can start my day count over tomorrow. and the hotel doors open, and there's sober David, who is the photographer for the crew. And I thought, okay, well, if ever there was a sign, it's sober David appearing right at this moment. I'm not going to open the whiskey. I tell him my story. It all tumbles out. Oh, my God, this one guy took my bag, and then there was a motorbike, and then he didn't get to stop at the hotel, and, I'm struggling over my words. And David says, oh, well, I'm sure you know that a woman walking alone in Sri Lanka any time of day or night is considered a sex worker. And I said, I was not aware of that interesting cultural fact. Thank you so much. So I said, will you please go with me to KFC? I still have to get the chicken. So he walks me to get the chicken. We come back to the hotel, and I get back up I go up to the roof, and Tony's already there. He's got a cocktail. He's smoking a cigarette. He's lounging at some rattan furniture, and there's a rattan coffee table. And I put the hot chicken down, and he says, how did it go? And I thought, how did it go? Was I just mistaken for a sex worker? Did my stuff almost get stolen, or was I just kind of an idiot who doesn't understand how anything works in Sri Lanka? And then I thought about him ignoring the Madai festival, ignoring all that tumult and ceremony and excitement, and looking at his phone, and I thought, nah. I said, it was fine. Everything went fine. There were no trouble at all. I didn't want to tell him my story, and I was pretty sure that he didn't want to hear it. But I did write it down later that night, and I thought, I'm going to tell it someday. So thank you for listening to it tonight.